can download these slides along with the presentation notes at this URL right there. It's a short URL. I don't know that you have that you're able to click on it through the Meet, but hopefully you could write that down really quickly if you want to see what's going on in real time, or if you want to come back to it later. As Shane mentioned, our next session is in 2 weeks. Unlock Your Resilience. JJ Acker will be presenting that. 10 o'clock on Wednesday, 2 weeks from today. And again, please mute your microphones. We'll keep them muted throughout. There's a lovely bird tweeting somewhere in the universe. Okay. Again, session's being recorded. And that's me. I'm Rick Murdoch. I work for DHRM in the Leadership Development and Organizational Design area. That's my email address right there, rsmurdoch@utah.gov. We had such a response to the topic today that we're limited to 250 people in the actual Google Meet forum, but we're able to live stream it. So some of you will be participating by live stream. If you're not actually in the Meet room, we've opened up my email chat feature for you to send your questions or comments if you'd like to. So just rsmurdoch@utah.gov, you can just direct message me there. And we'll try to keep track of what people are sending in real time. Well, maybe not quite real time, but we'll try to check it a couple of times. If we don't get to all of it, then I'll try to respond to you at least at some point afterward. Let's jump in. So maybe you or someone close to you is graduating, or maybe they're getting married, or they have some sort of travel plans, or maybe they've got tickets to an eagerly awaited concert or sporting event of some kind. And as we all know, everything like this has basically been canceled, or at least reduced in some way. It's almost impossible to find anyone that hasn't lost something in the last 2 months. And really, when we compare it to the loss of human life or a loved one, these things seem pretty trivial, but still, they are losses, and we're dealing with them. You've probably asked yourself this, I know I have, when are things going to get back to normal? When can I travel again? When can I sit in a stadium? When? And the truth is, nobody really knows. In fact, I have this thing where it's not diagnosed. Maybe it should be, but I think maybe a lot of people have this. But when I'm close to some type of drop off or ledge or cliff, I feel the potential of falling. I think it's probably just the fear of heights, but it's not always there. But sometimes when I'm standing near some sort of drop off, I feel that potential energy, and I imagine it converting to kinetic energy. Let me demonstrate here. There's my rudimentary cliff, and there's a very accurate depiction of me standing on that cliff. And sometimes I realize that if something were to go wrong, I could just fall. And I feel that. I feel that sensation. I looked it up. It's called l'appel du vide. That's really good French, I'm sure you will agree. Or the call of the void. Most of the time, I'll walk along a ledge or drop off with no worries at all. But every once in a while, I'll feel that potential for disaster. A reminder that I'm nearly always on the edge of disaster. And the last 2 months have kind of reminded me of that feeling. We've been reminded that we are almost always on the edge of disaster. In fact, we live in a unfathomably huge and violent universe, maybe multiverse, where we, in scope, scale, size, volume, are more or less nothing. We blink in and out of existence like a dust particle being lit up by street lamps at night. Just sit on this rock, our corner speck in the universe is, oh look, it's spinning, that's nice. It's actually very lovely. It's right for us. Beauty and diversion keep us distracted from the reality that we are clinging to a rock and hurtling through space. We're spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. I looked that up. It's 1,000. Oops, it's 1,000 miles per hour. But really, that's nothing compared to how fast we're going past the sun. 67,000 miles an hour. We really are just clinging to this rock, hurtling through space. We don't have to think about that very often because, we're distracted by the beauty and it doesn't feel like we're going anywhere. But we are. And every once in a while, when we're reminded of that, it feels a little weird. I mean, we brought up kind of thinking that we live in this beautiful little neighborhood with our mother's son watching over us, and yay, whee. But in reality, it's more of this. We are careening through the void of space on a journey to basically nowhere in particular. And luckily, we just aren't forced to think about it. 67,000 miles per hour means that we are eons away from where the spot in the universe that we were born in. Whew. But we get to live in this gorgeous place right here. It's covered in this stuff that if we were dropped in right there and left, we would die. Most of the earth is covered in stuff that would kill us. But we don't think about that either because we live in this beautiful valley that only does this at 7:09 a.m. every once in a while. Y'all, I'm sure, remember the earthquake from a few weeks ago. Oh, and then somebody mentioned these guys. Come on, murder hornets. Who named that? But don't worry, they mostly just murder honeybees, which have been dying lately on their own without being murdered. Murder hornets only kill, I'm told, about 50 people per year, which, that's a pretty good number. Serial killers don't kill 50 people a year, probably. Anyway. And then at least our society is prosperous. Now we have unemployment rates that we haven't seen since the 1930s. And we all know that the 1930s is not the decade we want to emulate for our financial stuff. Now, these numbers may not be exactly correct. I have just taken slides and built together some stuff that is in my personal memory and consciousness. I want to show you what actually I am thinking in the back of my mind. I haven't verified any of this. This is just what I think it is. It might be different, but 15% unemployment is something I read a couple days ago. We do want to emulate the 30s for their style, though. I like the baggy pants and the sweater vests, maybe the granny shot from the free throw line. All those things are great about the 30s. We don't want their unemployment rates, though. Oh, and by the way, on top of all this, the Utah legislature is meeting in special session in June to address, well, budgets. Let me fix that. Hold on. There we go. Budgets. You remember that beautiful, fantastic budget they passed in March, just mere hours before the world shut down? Well, things have changed since then, and now our projects and programs, and don't want to say it, but maybe our staffs are at risk. So this is real. I know I'm being somewhat flippant about it, and forgive me if it feels unprofessional, but it is real, and what we're dealing with here. You'll notice I never actually even mentioned the name of the virus that's kind of thrown us into this. But it is uncertainty. That's what we're dealing with. We all probably process it in unique ways. I myself haven't noticed if I'm experiencing fear or anxiety. I am when I dig deep and really think about it, but I haven't really noticed it. It just feels like I'm living my life. That may be true for you and for your people too. But this training is tuned for leaders and for managers. So I'll be talking as if you have folks that you supervise. But if you don't, and you want to think about your immediate work team, that might be a good thing. Or you could think about relationships you might have. If you want to have specific people in mind, it would be good. let's think of some specific people to think about today as we discuss these items. Okay, I'm back. I looked like I got muted for a second. Is that right? Anyway, whatever the case, hopefully you were able to hear what I've been saying. But think about a specific group of people, and maybe let's take some notes today. Not notes on what I'm necessarily saying, but impressions that you get or ideas that you get about how to lead your folks in these times of uncertainty. Your folks are going through stuff, whether they consciously recognize it or not, they are. And you taking a few notes today with ways that you might address what they're going through and help them is probably a good idea. You can use your phone or a laptop or some other device, but I read a study last year about how taking paper-based notes is actually better for retention than using a device. So if you have a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, why don't you find it and use that. I'll give you 30 seconds to figure out a way to take some notes. Go ahead and do that now. While you're doing that, just a couple more things. Like I said, we've been through some stuff recently, earthquake, quarantine, but does anybody remember when Australia was on fire or the tornadoes in Memphis? And even Africa it has some ongoing pestilence, actual literal locusts. Whew, we see this stuff on the news and social media, we tuck it away. In fact, even going to the grocery store with the masks and the marked X's and the arrows and the lines and the constant reminders to stay at a distance, all of that can be draining on us and it can be heavy. And so it's probably best to assume that your teams might be experiencing the effects of anxiety and fear. So let's shift gears for just a minute and focus on those team members. Hopefully you have something to take notes on now. And also, I think it would be a good idea, and you do what you want to do. You're adults here, but I've created a little spreadsheet that I'm going to use to think about my team today. Feel free to emulate this if you'd like. In fact, you can leave this screen and go to your Google Drive and set up a little spreadsheet. The thing now, you don't have to use these titles unless you want to, but this is what I've come up with here. I've got the name of my folks, their preferred communication style, what I know about them, what I'd like to know, and then next steps. Go ahead and go make this while we're talking if you'd like. I think it would be helpful to have it available to you today as we go through this stuff, because as you have ideas, you can jot them down. Here I've written the names of my people in there: Isaac, Emmy, Kate, Jacob, and Thomas. This is my fictional team that we'll talk about today. Once you have that set up, we can move on. We can just set that aside for a minute, and we'll come back to it a little later. Actually, I'm going to give you just a minute here to go do that. It'd be nice to have this, because later on in our discussion, we will come back to this and want to be able to fill some things in. So at least if you don't have a team that you are leading, maybe think of your own work team, a team that you work with, or if you don't have people that you work with, think of some folks that you interact with that might want to have a little bit of leadership from you. And make a little chart. If I've got 5 people here, but you may need more lines than that or rows than that. If you need that, go ahead and do what you need to do. But for today's purposes, maybe pick 1 or 2 people to focus on. And then you can go back and do the exercise for others. All right. With that in mind, and feel free to keep working on your spreadsheet if you need to. We have this little rudimentary drawing of a human brain. This part is the rational part of the brain where we process our thoughts. This is the emotional part of the brain where the limbic system kind of kicks in. And then this is the brain stem, where things that are involuntary happen. The reason I'm showing you this is because our brains process fear in ways that we need to be aware of. The book, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, does a pretty good job outlining how this works. I found a website a few days ago called goodtherapy.org that really kind of boils down what the limbic system does. And I think it's important for us to think about, or at least to consider what the limbic system is doing when people are fearful or experiencing anxiety. The amygdala and the hippocampus work together to regulate our emotions. The amygdala's job is to assign memories based on fear, and the hippocampus job is to assign memories based on other things, like nostalgic memories, like when you smell some scent, like fresh baked bread reminds you of your grandma or whatever. But the amygdala is what processes our fear, and it really does kind of hold on to these evolutionary type emotions that help us survive. And in fact, if my understanding is correct, the emotional part of the brain, the limbic system, is wired directly to our senses, our eyes especially, so that we literally can see a threat, process it before we've had any rational thought at all about it. That's why it reminds me of the cat videos where someone sat a cucumber behind the cat and it jumps like immediately. If we perceived cucumbers as a threat, we would jump too, because we have that direct link from our eyes to our emotional center there. Now, one thing that it does for us when the limbic system activates, it gives us, it oxygenates our blood. We start to breathe deeper. Our eyes get wider to get more light in so we can detect movement better. Our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure increases, and we're ready to either fight or flee or freeze, whatever it is that we need to do to survive. And that happens when we are in a fearful situation. That's great. That's great for survival. The problem is when the fearful situation continues longer than it should, those instincts tend to become damaging to the body. We don't want to have high blood pressure for an extended period of time. We don't want to be ready to flee at any given moment. It becomes unhealthy. So it's really a good idea to spend some time mitigating fear when we're in these types of situations. Daniel Goleman, also in Emotional Intelligence, page 49. I remember it's page 49 because it mentions San Francisco. He talks, 49ers. He talks about a plane ride from New York to San Francisco where there was quite a bit of turbulence. And if memory serves, he explains how folks on the plane who focused intensely on the turbulence experienced greater fear than those that just kept doing their own thing, like just kept reading or the crossword puzzle or whatever it is they were doing. And he found that interesting. So I guess the idea here is that if we ignore things that we can't control, that we're better off, at least as far as the experience of fear that we have. I tried this experiment. I was on a plane ride from Salt Lake to Denver, and those of you that have flown to Denver know that quite often there's some turbulence flying into Denver. There's a lot of wind coming off the mountains there. Or maybe it's from the plains, I don't know. But whatever the case, there is turbulence there. And I decided that I was going to try to ignore the fear that comes from turbulence. And we pitched quite a bit in those planes. So every time we pitched, I would just smile and fake a little laugh, just a little. And every time that would happen, the rest of the crowd would be like, ah! And I was like, I assumed that my seatmates thought I was crazy because, everybody else is feeling this intense fear. And I'm just like, that guy's a sociopath. But whatever the case, it worked. Not giving focus to that fear helped me not experience it as intensely as I might have. So the question is, where's our focus in times like these? We focus because what we focus on, and this is kind of a no-brainer, what we focus on becomes what we see. When we focus on fear, we get fear. When we focus on anger, we get anger. When we focus on positivity, we get positivity. Has anybody watched John Krasinski's Some Good News? That is a little YouTube thing that John Krasinski, he's the Jim from The Office, or Jack Ryan from Jack Ryan, the TV show. He decided that people were too focused on fear and the hard things that were happening, and so he built this little YouTube show that just shows positivity, and it's a nice little thing. I would recommend looking it up if you're looking for some positivity in your life. All right, with this in mind, let's take a look at our team again. You can pull up your spreadsheet if you like. What I've done here in this first column is I've just filled in my team's preferred communication method, and then I've given them a ranking on how good they are at getting back to me when I communicate with them. So for Isaac, I'm not sure what he prefers, so I just put not sure. I don't know if he has a preference. For Emmy, she prefers text, and she's really bad at getting back to me. Katie, she likes FaceTime, and she's good at getting back to me. Jacob likes text, and he's pretty good at it. And then Tommy likes the Google Meet format and is really good at getting back to me. The reason I'm doing this is because now I have a strategy for how I might approach anything that I might come up with that I need to deal with for my team. If for some reason I need to talk to Emmy, I'll send her a text, and then I'll follow up a couple of times because I know she has a hard time getting back. If I need to talk to Kate, I will call her on FaceTime. If I need to talk to Tommy, I will set up a Google meeting. And I probably could set it up immediately because he's really good at getting back to me. All right, so with that in mind, we can start to think about our people. And the next step, I think, is to just kind of jot down some things that we know about them. What I've done here is I've just thought about this person in particular, and then just wrote down some things specific to the last 2 months that I know about them. For Isaac, I know that he's alone, and I know that his immune system is compromised. He lives alone, his immune system is compromised, he probably is not getting out. So what I would like to know about him is his mental health good? Does he have family that comes and goes? Is he having fun? And my next step is to find out those things that I would like to know. And that is, I'm just going to ask him and then listen. I had to, I was limited in space here, so I had to kind of to boil it way down. If you've got people that you'd like to think about, you can use as much space as you like. Just write whatever you like. Now, one thing to keep in mind that this spreadsheet should be marked as private and should be for your eyes only. This is just a tool for you to start thinking about your folks and start identifying gaps that you might want to address. Now, the reason that we would do this, why would we spend our time thinking about the well-being of our team at a time like this? Well, it all does play into output, doesn't it? Mental health, fear, anxiety will have consequences for the output that we're getting from our folks. Now, some of you are probably, what exactly is he asking me to do? I've kind of left this a little bit vague on purpose because you should do what you think you need to do. Your folks are your folks, and your team is your team, and your insights are your insights. So you should figure out a way to jot down those insights and then come up with a plan. So under the column of next steps, here I've just put down that I would have a conversation or give a pep talk or listen to them. But really, that could be anything, any step towards making sure we understand what we can do to help our folks. For most of us, the action items will probably be some sort of communication, asking or conversing about the particulars of the gaps that you've identified. Communicating can be really hard anytime, but especially it can be difficult in times like these last 2 months, where almost all of our communication is happening in meetings like the one that we're participating in right now. It can get draining. It can get mind-numbing. And some of you are experiencing this drain and mind-numbing sensation right now as you look at your screen and listen to my voice drone on. Here's a couple things that you can do to mitigate the pain of this. Make sure that you're giving people breaks about once per hour at least, a couple of minutes to stretch their legs and get out of being engaged in a screen. Get outside between calls, get some fresh air, take a walk around the block, whatever you need to do. But just make sure that you've changed your scenery a little bit. And then in the middle of the call, when you're really dying, it's okay to turn off your camera and just do something weird. Lay on the ground or power pose or dance or whatever. Something that will make you feel like you're getting away with something that can re-engage you a little bit. And along with the spreadsheet that we just created, plan to set up some one-on-ones. You'll need to have some conversations with your folks, one-on-one. And you can do it by their preferred personal communication method, or you can do it by your preferred method, whatever you want. You have control over that. But the purpose is to clarify anything that's not clear and to fill in any gaps that you've discovered in your analysis. Now, why would we want to provide clarity? I mean, that's obvious. We want to give clarity when we are feeling unstable. Clarity helps with stability, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Oh, by the way, this spreadsheet, and I can't say this enough, this is not meant to be punitive at all. These gaps that we're identifying are not meant to be something that we can, they're not meant to be gotchas. They're only meant to be, where is their pain and how can I address it? Do not use this as some way to be punitive towards your folks. All right, listening. Our ears are super important. They're always super important, but they're super important right now. It's a little harder to see nonverbal cues, but with our microphones, and when we're doing online calls, our microphones and our headsets help us pick up things that we wouldn't pick up in real life face-to-face conversations. We can hear verbal cues, we can interpret silences, and we can hear hesitations and even sometimes breathing. Let me just give you a couple of suggestions based on active listening that can be applied to communicating online. First, if you're a good active listener, you're probably audibly tracking conversations. You're probably giving some and yeah, You're making noise as people talk. But if you've noticed, online conversations are stilted when that happens. When noises come through, it slows the pace of the conversation and it breaks the rhythm of it. So it's probably good to limit the quick noises and try to be quiet. Limit them and put them in between sentences and then lengthen them out so they actually come through the microphone and they're not just little that's helpful. So a nice long is better than just a you can also do them with your facial expression. You've got a camera on you. You can usually use your facial expressions to show that you're tracking a conversation. But if you are the type of active listener that just needs to have those quick little noises, then go ahead and mute your microphone so that the rhythm of the conversation can go fast. Just keep your finger on the mute button, go back and forth. Nodding can replace verbal cues for online meetings. Any movement is noticeable when you've got 6 screens ahead of you or in front of you. You usually notice any type of movement. Nodding is acceptable and good. And then also be sure to track those who that are not participating in your conversations online. And one way to do that is to actually ask them questions, to draw them out, especially those who generally do contribute in person. Or you could have a little after meeting with those folks to say, hey, what did you think of the meeting? Anything stick out to you? It's nice to get their feedback, and it's good to pull them into participation. And then finally, remember that the small talk. We don't have a water cooler that we can gather around right now, and we're meeting online for just about everything. We need a little small talk from time to time. So schedule some of that time with your meeting, or don't worry about it if things devolve into a tangent every so often. You can always pull it back and get it back on topic. But the small talk is important for the relationships that we build with our coworkers. We are more than just the work that we're doing. Our relationships transcend that. So let's make sure that we've allowed for some of that. Okay, let me talk to you a little bit about a theory, a real live theory that's studied by scholars and everything. And the theory is really easily boiled down. It's called the uncertainty reduction theory. It says more or less that in order to reduce uncertainty about another person that you've met, you must get to know things about them. And information leads to more certainty. If you feel uncertain about someone on your team, or you're just not sure what's happening where they are, or if you sense that your team member is feeling uncertain about you, you have to start a dialogue. You need to start sharing information. Share information that's appropriate to share, obviously, but information cures uncertainty. Information cures it. We can extrapolate this theory just a little bit like this. In times of uncertainty, be as transparent as you reasonably can be. When we're nervous, fearful, uncertain, we're looking for trustworthy information. We're looking for information that jibes with our view of the world. And that's why we share things on social media that maybe we shouldn't. But we are looking for information to help us make sense of the uncertainty. And you can provide that. Be transparent as you can be, as you can reasonably be. Oh, trustworthy information, not just any information. It has to be trustworthy information to help us feel stable. Okay. This little model here that we'll look at to help us build stability for folks. This triangle represents you as a leader. And the circle behind it is the stability that grows out of you as a leader. And there are three pieces to helping folks feel stable. And one of the things that come out of it is just a little button of trust. Trust permeates these three things. If you can provide these three things, people will trust you. And when they trust things, they feel stable. And it's important to feel stable in times like these. The first thing is empathy. A lot of high achieving leaders struggle with this one, maybe less so in the public sector, actually. But signaling a lack of empathy is a major barrier to empowering folks. If you think you can, if you care more about yourself than others, people won't trust you. And if it's obvious that you care more about yourself than others, then people just won't trust you. They won't let you lead them. Empathy wobbles, and when I say wobbles, what I mean is something that disrupts the stability. So if you're wobbling in this section of empathy, then that means that you're disrupting your stability. Empathy wobbles are common among people who are analytical and driven to learn. Oh, by the way, I'm taking this text about empathy here from an article from the Harvard Business Review by Fry and Morris. If you would like to see the notes that I'm referring to, that's that little URL that was at the beginning of the presentation. That is where you can find them, and I'll put that up again at the end, and you can go take a look at this source. This article was, I think it's a good one to read right now. So if you do wobble in the empathy area, one thing that we can suggest is that you pay close attention to other people when they have the floor, when you're in a meeting. That's one thing that you can do to show empathy. People that lack empathy often get impatient with those who aren't similarly motivated, or they take longer than they do to understand something. Additionally, tools and experience of the modern workplace continually distract or prevent us from demonstrating empathy very well. Our beeping and buzzing devices, phones in particular, constantly assert our self-importance. Oh, I've got a text and I'm talking to you right now, but I need to look at this text. And sometimes we do it right in the middle of conversations or meetings, right? One way to show better empathy is in those group settings, to concentrate, not show some big show of, oh, I'm bored with this, or not to just constantly be texting other people from a meeting. It's important to put away those phones every so often and to show actual empathy. Another way to show empathy is to actually care about people. It's probably the best way. The next item here on the list is ability. In the article, they call it logic, but we'll call it ability because what they're talking about is the ability to get things done and be able to make a case for what you're doing. If people don't always have confidence in the rigor of your ideas, or if they don't have full faith in your ability to deliver on your ideas, then this ability section of this model is probably your wobble. If they don't trust your judgment, why would they want you to lead them? For most logic wobblers or ability wobblers, rigor really isn't the issue. Much of the time, the problem is the perception of being wobbly in logic rather than the reality of it. In other words, not being able to make a case very well for what you want to do. It comes down to a communication issue for some of us. We try to tell people what we want to do and what we want to have them do, and we can't explain it well. We maybe meander around a little bit. We don't ever get to the point, and that puts a wobble on that section of our ability to give stability. One thing to do about that is to stop telling the big story and boil it down to its final result. Tell the final result first. Tell what the payoff is first. Start with your main point or a headline, and then work your way down to the big picture. Start with the headline. It's really is a matter of communicating well the direction your team is going. And then finally, this third piece is authenticity. If people feel like they're not getting access to the real you in a full and complete accounting of what you know, think, and feel, then you probably are wobbling in that authenticity area. Here's a quick test. Just ask yourself, how different is your professional persona from the one you show around family and friends? Is there a big difference? If there is a sharp difference, what are you getting what are you getting out of not showing your full self to your work people? What does that do for you? I mean, there might be some short-term gains from not being completely authentic, but long term, it can put a cap on how much people can trust you. I can tell that person is not being himself or herself, and that caps how much trust they'll give you. So we've got to be authentic. We've got to share pieces of ourselves. People need to be able to know us. That one helps with the other two, doesn't it? If we are showing our genuine selves, we tend to empathize with others better because we're showing some of our own weaknesses and gaps. And we tend to be able to show our ideas better because people know us and they know what our hearts are and where we're headed. All of this is helpful as you lead your group. What this does for the people that you lead is it gives them an anchor, something to hold on to that is stable. They know that their leader, their boss, their coworker, whoever you are, they know that that person is stable and that that person will look out for them and will not sugarcoat things when things go bad. All right, I've got this little engagement matrix. On one side, going up there, we've got motivation, and then the other side is ability. And what I've done here is I've just mapped. Do you remember my team, Isaac, Emmy, Kate, Jacob, and Thomas? I'm going to just map them on here. There's Isaac, there's Emmy. Now those two have a lot of ability, but maybe their motivation's a little low. They might be a little burned out, those two. There's Kate, she's really motivated, doesn't have quite the ability the others do. There's Jacob, he's got quite a bit of ability, fairly motivated. And then there's Tommy with very little ability, but pretty motivated. Now, what we've done here is we've just kind of taken a look at our team and where they sit with their both motivation and their abilities. This, I think, is really instructive. Again, if you were to do this exercise for your team, this is for your eyes only. You would never want to see the whole team. You just wouldn't want to create what would happen if you were to show this to the whole team. But you can make some assumptions here with Isaac and Emmy down here. Let's get that out of the way. With Isaac and Emmy down here, we can assume that they're really good at what they do and that maybe they're a little burned out. You would not treat Isaac and Emmy the same way you would treat Tommy if you're looking to help them with their jobs. One thing you can do is you could add a little dotted line here to make kind of a matrix out of this. And this helps kind of instruct us on what we can do to mitigate our circumstances here, how we can help people along. If we have someone in this upper right-hand quadrant, then really all we need to do is check in. They're highly motivated, they're good at what they do, they're getting the job done. You just check in with them, make sure that they're off and running. You have someone down over here in the upper left quadrant, they need some help with their abilities, so some training would be a good idea for Tommy. Keep calling him Tommy, his name's Thomas. And then if we have folks down in this lower right-hand quadrant, then we're going to want to think of some ways to motivate. We don't have anybody in that last quadrant, but if we did, this is where an intervention would come in. And the intervention would look something like training, checking in regularly, and some motivational thing. So we basically would just do the other three things for that person. The idea behind this is to just know where our people are and what we can do to help them along. BJ Fogg from Stanford University has this model. It's his behavior model. The idea here is that when you ask somebody to do something, there are some ways to help motivate them. The bottom line shows the thing that you've asked them to do. Sometimes it's hard to do, sometimes it's easy to do. And the other line shows how motivated they are. They either have low motivation or high motivation. And he says that there is a line that demarks where people will actually do what you want them to do. If it's hard to do and they have low motivation, they just won't do it. If they have high motivation, they might do something hard. But if they have low motivation and it's easy to do, they might just do it, depending on one thing. And that one thing, and this line rarely represents it, is a trigger. The model is behavior equals motivation and ability plus a trigger. So this is actually really good news for our team that I just showed you in the other matrix, where our best, the guys with the most ability are actually have lower motivation. That works out great because their job, because they're so good at it, is easy to do. All we need is a trigger. We just need to ask them. And it also works out well for Thomas and the others that are more highly motivated, maybe not as good at their jobs. They are willing to do hard things. So that's good. We're actually in a very good situation with I'm going to go back to it, with this team. In a pretty good situation here. All we have to do is work out the triggers. Okay, with all of that in mind, I'm going to scroll through this really quickly again. With all of that in mind, it's important for us to be thinking about our people and how we can help them along. Think about the jobs that they have. What are they being asked to do? How difficult are those jobs? How easy are they? How much more difficult now than 2 months ago are they? How much easier are they now than then? What types of triggers can we put in place that will help folks feel good about what they're doing, feel stable about what they're doing? What types of mitigations can we do for ourselves to help us with our empathy, our ability, and our authenticity to create a more stable work environment for our folks? Because we are hurtling through space and time without really knowing it all the time. We are on the brink of destruction all the time. And when we're reminded of it by an earthquake and by a virus, it can get a little daunting for us. We need to be pulled back from those things that we can't control and given a focus on things that we can control and make it into a positive focus. That is the message I have for you today. Again, I mentioned that you can access this presentation, this slideshow, along with the notes that I referenced at that URL, SHORT URL, short URL at // lowercase h, uppercase SUVY. Write that down if you'd like to go take a look at these, or if you'd like to have access to them, you're welcome to go look at them. Again, 2 weeks from today, Unlock Your Resilience with JJ Acker, Wednesday, May 27th at 10 a.m. And later today, you'll be receiving an email that we'd like you to fill out with an evaluation from us. Tell us how we can improve these. This is our first attempt at this type of a webinar. Hopefully it was useful to you. Hopefully you took some notes where you can help your folks, and we can find some positivity in these dark times. Thanks for your time and attention. I will be checking the chat and responding to people that have asked questions throughout the day today. Again, thank you again for being here. Hopefully we'll see you in a couple of weeks.